some of you, I'm guessing most of you.
All right, let me move my webcam. We got Nusha.
Participated in the last testing grounds where we did Lawbringer and Nusha. So the
My
feedback
bad.
we got
that.
for Nusha was very
All right,
positive.
and let me move chat
well.
too. I didn't know chat was in the way.
The change that we did for her traps,
right, there you
for
go.
Glass Waltz and Jade Ballet.
Heavy attacks now cancel into trap. Okay. Zone attack now cancels. Okay, cool. Into okay.
No, it wasn't. So that's great. So because of this, because the feedback was great, and because it really helps Nusha, we've decided to push these live right now. Right, so that's great.
Awesome.
They're live right now.
To go through the changes themselves. So heavy attacks on cancel the Glass Waltz at 500 ms from 4. From zone
this
attack,
is live right now.
Jade Ballet at 700 instead of 6, and Glass Waltz and Jade Ballet are now 300 down from 4. So what this means overall is that it's gonna land at the same time, right? So when you used to play with Nusha, you can do like a heavy soft feint to Glass Waltz, for example, and it would land the exact same time as the hit would have landed, right? So you need to block it at the right time, parry at the right time, do all that sort of stuff. Yeah. This does not change. However, what does change is okay, this is weird.
Yo, what's going on with the lighting? You see that? Something's going on.
Sorry. Tech issues.
Yeah, a little tech issue. It's all right. You good? You good? Keep going.
Yeah. So what does change, however, is the fact that the soft feint, basically like the cancels to Glass Waltz and Jade Ballet come out a little bit later, and the trap itself is a bit faster. So because of this, it's like a little bit later than normal feint timing, so it's even harder to tell if somebody fainted or is going to use it.
And that's what you needed.
And on
that's
top
what
of
you
that,
needed.
it's so much faster. Like that 100 ms pushes it toward being fully unreactable, which means that it's going to be like it's a lot easier to land, and it's a lot harder to react. Right, you really have to make a read whenever
which is good.
Goes a heavy.
Now look, guys. Most of y'all couldn't react anyway, so this doesn't affect you.
It's an interesting tool.
Lord Bifrost, thank you for the tier 1.
Better at high level, where people don't like miss time parries.
It's just for like when you fight a reaction god and then they're reacting to the trap. That gets annoying. Then Nusha was unplayable.
I'm really happy that we found a solution that works.
But for most of us in here, none of this matters because we couldn't react to it anyway.
It's just because she looks so darn cool.
Yeah, she does. She really does, and like everything's so unique about this character.
So unique.
But this helps the character,
and I'm super happy that
reaction gods basically
keep it
Me too.
and to have that function in there, right? Because otherwise. The other solutions were not as fun as this.
I know. I was really hoping for this, so I'm glad it worked.
Super hyped about this.
Nice.
All right. Okay. So next up, Warden. So Warden's been underperforming for a little while.
Oh, let's see this Warden change. Let's see, man. What they got?
Where you're like, well, you
now 800.
Okay, good. That they're like,
faster side heavy
Warden
finishers.
Specialists, but they're
better trajectory,
so
it's going to catch. It's going to track a little bit better. It's going to clip you now.
So we're doing some changes to Warden to make the hero a little bit more competitive.
Shoulder bash can be now done from 100 to 5.
Warden has a bit of a harder time. So we're doing
that's going to get kind of nasty.
Changes. So first of all, we're changing is side heavy finishers. They're 100 ms faster, right? So they're 800 instead of 9. That should really help getting them out, right? Because at 900, it's a bit slow. It's a little bit easier for people around you to react to. You have
that
to
badge
time
gonna
them
go
a little
crazy
bit more differently. So at 8, it's a more standard speed, but it really helps. We've seen in the past that when we've sped up Orochi's side heavy finishers, for example, they tend to be much better. They hit a lot more, so that's great. And on top of this, we've also improved their trajectory. So for this, it's a little bit different. Normally, when Warden swings, like you're gonna swing your big sword.
Right.
The thing is that the way the weapon swings is really diagonal.
Yeah.
So we normally, like the way it worked is the trajectory that we had really matched the weapon super well. But because of this, it was super hard to hit people externally around, right? And even sometimes it looked like the weapon was going to hit them and it didn't. So what we did is we took that trajectory and we flattened it quite a bit. So it doesn't 100% match the weapon, but we can cheat that a little bit so that it hits people around you way
So is it going to look like it swings to the side? Probably not. It's just going to have like a phantom hitbox type thing, like where
people around him and really hit them on the side. So that works quite well.
Okay, I mean that's cool. I mean, by all means, if it makes them move better,
and on
do
top
it.
Of this, a feature that I've seen requested by players quite a bit, and we've done some testing. It seemed to feel really good. Was that shoulder bash? Normally, when you want to do it off a front dodge, right? You could only do it from 3 to 500 ms. So you can delay it a little bit, not too much. But because it's a charging bash. Takes a while to get into. Takes like a little bit too long to get into the actual bash portion, even if you don't charge it. We're super comfortable making it start at 100 ms in your front dodge. So that accomplishes a couple things. It's going to come out 200 ms faster if you just buffer everything, right? Which makes a big difference. It's a bit harder to react to, and you can also delay it even more, right? So if you think somebody's going to like try to dodge super early or dodge later, do whatever you want to do, like it gives you a lot more versatility with Warden. It should make it a lot easier to open up people with.
Because what people would do, right, they would just early dodge
for Warden, right? Like it lets you really initiate
dodge
from
real
further
early,
out. It lets you do like a lot of weird things
again.
that not a lot of heroes are able to do. So it's great. And even though Warden is a little bit simpler in terms of kit and what the character kind of does, at the end of the day,
you would think, oh, they dodged. Let me fully charge it and hit them with the ultimate. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Also in duels a little bit.
But now it's gonna be harder to react to. Like now
it's gonna
be tough.
And we're still keeping.
I'm curious to see how this works.
Even with this,
very curious.
Might not get to S tier or something, which is okay.
But if empty dodge,
really
for sure.
We can still keep
because if they don't, you're right. Because if you empty dodge,
so now,
it works pretty well, right?
Yeah, we got a good cadence going.
All right,
you're gonna bait that dodge, or if they don't dodge,
list of underperforming
shoulder
heroes
bash out at 100 ms, you smacking them.
So Hito,
it's a lot of text there.
Yeah, it's a lot of text, right? We're gonna have to look at this.
Oh my God, Hito gets above.
Okay, please help me.
Yeah, right. But the idea is that Hitokiri has also been kind of underperforming.
Opening heavies have
sometimes is a bit of a noob stomper. Like it's very effective at lower levels.
I didn't want to say anything because I mean, when you said that, I'm like, what do you mean underperforming? Oh no, am I the noob being stomped?
That's the thing. Right? So we've tried to focus some changes to Hito
so
that
the
are
charge
not really,
time
shouldn't really affect much lower level, but should have higher impact, like a lot more impact at higher level, so that the hero's more playable. She's gonna be a little bit more accessible, but have a bit more power there. So what we've been doing is, first of all, her heavy openers, right? So before they if you remember. Launch Hitokiri, right?
I do remember
Launch Hito was like very strong because Launch Hito had uninterruptible stance on those opener heavies, but very, very.
This sounds
very
crazy. Hold on.
Right. Which led to.
Hold on, wait a minute. I'm trying to really understand this.
Well, heavy on red actually. So we ended up removing the armor there.
I'm reading it to myself. I'm not speaking
it from there because it was like a little bit too strong. And we wanted to really bring the power.
The heavy openers deal less damage though.
However, as we've been going on and advancing with the hero and doing a lot more heroes, a lot more reworks, all that sort of stuff, Hito kind of fell down in the rankings and
I get it. Yeah, I know Hito.
So we're adding back
list is down.
armor there, but we're adding it back at 500 ms at the earliest.
Okay.
So basically, it's like if you tap heavy. Then 500 ms into that, you're going to get armor, right? So if you charge it a little bit longer, it comes in a little bit later. So there's a couple of those things that it's different. But the idea here is that one of the big counters to Hito was just lighting. Whenever you saw Hito throwing a heavy, often enough, if you're like, oh yeah, they're going to charge a little bit or whatever, you could really hit them out with a light. It was super hard. Made the hero hard to really open up and initiate with.
That's what I was supposed to do this whole time.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do this whole time.
Now I know.
See, and that's what I was talking about earlier.
So see, by doing this, by making this,
how many of y'all knew
really lets her be able
to counter
to
Hito just light
more open and free manner
because that'll force Hito to do the normal charge, the quickest heavy, and then you'll be ready to pay
for the uncharged version. Right?
Never mind. Let me stop.
It used to be that you would charge for 400 milliseconds.
Let me stop.
And then the strike itself, so when it actually started to swing, was 400. So we've reduced the charge portion by 100 ms. So the total attack time when you just tap heavy is 700 instead of 8. We've also reduced the damage a little bit to compensate for this, but it also helps with the armor coming in with the slightly faster opener speed. Should really help Hitokiri really get there. It has a couple of really good points, right? It adds 100 ms more delayability, so you can be less predictable with it. And it also has a pretty nice impact on frame advantage. So when you do end up landing your big heavy
I want to see how strong
this
makes
Hito.
I
forget the name because I'm kind of bad.
I think it's a big heavy finisher.
Big heavy finisher, right?
That's the
fully charged ones
that
are unblockable and armored. So when you do land them, you put your opponent in heavy hit reaction, and then you get a lot of frame advantage.
Right.
And so because of this, with the heavies being at 700, it gives you a bit of an edge that you didn't really have before, on top of the armor, on top of all of those good things. So we're really hoping that it'll open up Hitokiri's game plan a little bit more here and let her be able to get in a little bit more, get a bit more pressure going, use all of her kit and get into it and, just perform better.
There you go.
So that's good. And then we've also adjusted the chain timings from her opener heavies to the chain heavy attacks. Well, the opener heavies and chain heavies to chain heavies, chain lights, well, light finishers, kicks, and whatever. So it used to be from 366 to 400 ms. So whenever you would like hit your heavy, it would block, it would hit or whatever. Yeah. The time it would take for the next attack to even start would be at 366. Yeah. The reason why we did this is to make sure that if you threw a heavy and it landed or was blocked or whatever, everybody could always dodge the following light. Because we felt, oh yeah, it's a bit too, like, it's a bit oppressive. It's kind of hard to deal with. So we decided to revert this and to go back to 200 to 400. So it gives you, again, a bit bigger delayability window, makes you a little bit less predictable, also makes that light tougher to deal with, right? Because if you're trying to pre-dodge whatever is going to be happening, that light is going to hit you. With the dodge changes, it also helps a little bit there. So that's great. Yeah. But it's like, it's all that stuff. And it also makes the hero better just because the chain heavies that have armor, the armor kicks in late. So because it kicks in late, now it's going to kick in a little bit earlier, like 166 ms earlier, which makes a bit of a difference there. So it's all those like little changes here that we can do that really help the flow of the hero and get into a position where, well, actually, I feel better playing her. I get a bit more options. I can actually use everything in my kit to be able to get somewhere, right? Her kit is kind of, it's not that it's limited. There's not a lot of stuff, but it's designed to be around kind of being kind of like a blender where you're going in and whenever she does a correct read, whenever something right happens, she gets to go again and again and again and again. And that's the idea. But with those timings, that was a little bit too challenging to get to. So we kind of messed around with that a little bit to make it a bit more accessible. Yeah. Now, last but not least, even though it's on the last item on the list, we adjusted our zone attack trajectory to better match weapon visuals. We love to rate this. I love to rate that.
Yeah.
But essentially, her zone attack was a bit underwhelming. Couldn't really hit a lot of people around. So we've really adjusted it so it hits a bit further, hits more around her, and should be a better tool to use when there's multiple people around you. Try to hit them all. In the minion lane as well is pretty good.
Oh, okay.
One of the things I like to do with Hitokiri is just run Nuke Kubi and just go into them. You go into the minion. Like, not Kubi, I forget the name of the feat now.
Body count.
It doesn't matter. You go, you just...
One of the feats.
Yeah, one of the feats there. You go, you mash heavy, you kill a bunch of minions, you get infinite stamina. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, yeah.
But that works well. So that's it for Hitokiri there.
Wow.
So a lot of changes here. We hope everybody likes them. We're keeping an eye on the hero again. Sure. Keep going and see where we go.
Yeah, we keep an eye on all the heroes. But just so you know that, like, we don't just ignore stuff.
Laser focus on everybody.
For sure.
So next up, Aramusha. So this is a kind of a different change, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a buff and a nerf at the same time, which might sound a little bit weird, but I'll explain the logic behind it.
Blew my mind there. How does this work?
Aramusha has blade blockade, right? So blade blockade is when you tap down on the right stick. Goes into this kind of motion, can block a bunch of attacks, gets a bunch of different follow-ups. The thing is, you can go into blade blockade during the recovery of all of your attacks for like pretty much the entire time of the recovery. So you can cancel into it really well. We did this to make sure that you're able to time properly all these things, right? So that works well. However, you had such a large penalty on stamina when you whiffed it because it used to cost 5 stamina just to perform the move.
Yeah.
And if you didn't block anything, you would pay an extra 10. So it would go up to 15. It didn't really incentivize you to kind of use it. You were getting double penalized because most of the time when you miss it, you get guard broken. Something else happens.
Yeah.
So you get kind of like double penalized here. So what we decided to do instead is put all the stamina cost for this upfront. So it's on the activation itself. It now costs 10. So when you do manage to land it, it's still going to cost you 10, but it's always going to cost you 10, whether you block somebody with it or not. And so it should help also not really overuse it, right? It might just look like, just 5 extra stamina, but in the long term, it kind of makes a difference.
It adds up.
Especially with Aramusha that has like a lot of like really fast attacks. You're blowing through stamina like crazy.
Right.
So with this, you want to use it a little bit more sparingly, but you're not as penalized when you mistime it. So that's kind of like the idea here. It's a small change, but it has a good effect on Aramusha where you end up, you got to think a little bit more when you want to do it, right? So we like to promote that type of gameplay, so that kind of works there.
I like it, yeah. Very cool.
And then finally, Jorm. This might seem like more of a bug fix, but it's a big thing there. You can now perform Jormungandr's chain zone attack while you're out of block.
Nice.
So again, like this was like something that we overlooked when we did the rework and stuff, and we wanted to make sure that we kind of fix it. But this has a big implication because Jorm can now go into the minion lane and not have to lock in to nothing or even a potential hero to be able to really, really clear the minion lane. You can now go and do like heavy zone, heavy zone, heavy zone all the time, and you're doing good in the lane rather than having to do it from like in a locked position. Then it feels awkward. You don't really turn. It's kind of weird. So with this, like it works way better. It's a lot more interesting, and it's a small change, but it feels way better on Jorm there. That's great.
Cool. And if you
that's good. That's good for Aramusha.
You'll understand why the minion lane is important.
Exactly, right? And so like that onboarding flow is amazing.
Yeah,
I'm really super psyched with this. So it's really good stuff.
It's great. Yeah.
But that's it for our patch notes.
Okay, but that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, JC. But somebody seems like they were missing a bit. You mentioned at the beginning Nusha was in a testing ground with a certain Lawbro. Was there too, but I didn't see him there.
Yeah, Lawbringer's not there. I wonder why.
I wonder why, indeed. But we don't have to wonder for long because we have another segment coming up right after this where we're going to talk about the next testing grounds and we'll be able to share a bit more. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back.
Okay, next testing grounds. Okay.
Run to July
June
6th.
29th.
So
to
lots of fun stuff. So
July 6th, bash timing and Lawbringer Part 2.
We're testing actually two.
What do they mean by that bash timing? What do they mean by that?
Specifically, opener bash timings. I'll go into a little bit more detail afterwards. And also, I think you mentioned Lawbringer.
I did, yeah.
Right. So
where's
Lawbringer
Nusha?
Part 2.
Oh, there he is. Yeah, I saw
there he is.
I guess they're not doing Nusha.
So we'll talk about Lawbringer Part 2 as well in a little bit.
Awesome.
But let's get started with bash timings, right? So just as an overview before, right now in the game, like opener bashes, I mean really like front dodge bashes, right? So when you do front dodge into a bash, and so generally we have, in most cases at least, we do 500 ms bashes at 300 ms into the dodge.
They did Nusha already?
Right? So you can delay from 3 to 5, and you dodge front, and you can do that bash. The problem we're trying to have is that you can, like, players can react to the dodge, which is fine. This is actually what we want to happen.
Right.
So that's why we start to put that timing a little bit later so that you see your opponent dodge towards you, and then you have to make a call as a defender to go, do I dodge? Do I try to light him out of it? What do I do exactly here? The problem is that some players, especially super high level players or players that have amazing reactions, those actually exist. I'm pretty bad. I'm getting old, so I'm pretty bad at reactions.
I don't believe you, but
you don't believe me. Yeah, right.
No, but
if you look at that duel tournament, you'll see it happen. So some players have amazing reactions, and so because of this, they end up being able to react to not only the dodge but the actual bash.
Okay.
And because it's 500, they're able to properly react. It's almost single stimuli a lot of the time. You're able to dodge out of it. And then it makes a lot of heroes' offense really lackluster, right? If you look at Centurion, for example, where you do front dodge into kick, there's no real other options. And a lot of players are able to just go, well, I see Centurion front dodge, I'm gonna do nothing. And as soon as they see orange, as soon as they see an animation start, as soon as there's the tiniest bit of movement, they're able to dodge.
Yeah.
And so this is a problem because it creates situations where these heroes just cannot open up one bit. So what we're doing here with our bash timing changes is that we're going to be adjusting a lot of different heroes to have slightly faster front dodge bashes. And the way we're taking this is that we decided on 3 different buckets, right? So we have a bucket where it's heroes that have a front dodge bash and a non-feintable front dodge attack. So either a light only or a heavy that you can't feint. So we have this kind of bucket. We have a bucket where you have a front dodge bash, and you also have a feintable front dodge attack. So that gives an extra layer of mix-up in some cases. Already, we kind of know that at some levels, because you can't really react to the animation because they're very similar, some heroes are able to, or are okay at 500 because there's that heavy that you can feint or whatever. And then we have a third bucket, which is front dodge bash with nothing else. Right, so Centurion, as I mentioned before, Centurion has front dodge heavy, but it's kind of it's so different from the Legion kick that it's kind of easier to react to there. So let's see. So we've taken these 3 buckets and then we've assigned different speeds to different heroes in there, so we can test them out. So if you look at the list right now, we have bashes with attacks that are not feintable. So we put the changes on these heroes. This does not mean that the list is complete. This does not mean that we would not apply to other heroes when
Where's Warlord?
Or when we end up with the results from this testing grounds. It just means we've applied to these heroes for now. So in this case, we took, for example, here Griffon and Shigoki. their front dodge bash is now 466 instead of 500, right? So what we're doing also is that we're trying to go from 466 to 400 to figure out what timing is okay. I've had people tell me, like I have some discussions with pro players at some point. I go, 466 is probably okay for everything. Some of them say 433 is probably better. Some others say no, they need to be 400. So with this, we can actually fully test it out.
We answer all of the we cover all the variables.
We cover all the variables, right? So Griffon and Shigoki are going to be 466. Sent and Kyoshin are going to be 433, and JJ and Glad are going to be 400. So with these, like we're really able to tell. We'll be able to look at the results, look at what we have as feedback from players, from all sorts of different sources to go, what speed do these need to be actually viable, right? And at all levels. Typically, for these, when you're viable at super top level, is viable for everybody.
Right.
So that's great. And then we also have to make sure that it doesn't really cause problems, because at the 400 range, what we're a little bit more worried about is that it kind of creates frame advantage off of heavy finishers that push heavy reactions that might make it a little bit harder to get into. It might be great. It might not. We want to make sure that our players try it out and really see, right? So this is more of an experimental TG than just having, hey, we're testing out changes to this hero and, go ahead and have fun.
No, I'm back.
This is more like we really need the community's help to help us test these, because this is super useful, and there's way more players that are playing this game than we are on the team. So, and then at this point, I can't react at a 500 anyway. Yeah. Not a lot of people on our team. I think maybe one is able to. So it's super tricky. So we really want everybody's help with this. So we're really hoping. So this is it for that with bashes that have non-feintable attacks attached to them. So for bashes with a feintable attack, we took Zanhu, Shinobi, and Yorm. So Zanhu is at 466, Shinobi is at 433, and Yorm is at 400. Again, 3 different numbers. So we're going for this. Finally, bashes without any attacks. So Conk is a little bit different here, because
so
Conk
they said, you know what, Warlord, nah, you get nothing.
1 to 500. So we're testing out 466 for the speed of the bash itself, but having that bash at 300 in the front dodge instead of 100, to kind of like standardize that part a little bit so that it's easier for everybody. That's kind of like good standardization in this case. I know people don't really like when we talk about this, but at the end of the day, this is a good way to standardize it, because if the bash itself is not reactable, but you can react to the dodge, it creates a viable mix-up every time you front dodge. Because your opponent goes, I don't know if they're going to bash. Because you don't know if you're going to bash. They don't know when you're going to bash. They don't know what's going to be happening. Side dodging with attacks is risky. Some characters are able to like front dodge, feint into parries. They're always like parries now. So it makes like it makes a big difference, right? So we want to make this type of offense better. A little bit riskier on the defender side. You have to take more reads when you're defending against these. And it also helps these heroes to really, really get into their offense. But for that to work properly, it needs to be at 300, right? Because at 300, that's the threshold where pretty much everyone is able to go, oh, my opponent dodged.
Yeah.
And then you can, okay, they dodge. I can pre-dodge the bash before it starts, and you're able to fully dodge the bash, and you're okay. But the thing is, for these two heroes, right, we have 466 on Conk and 433 on Lawbringer. Lawbringer is going to test their grounds further, so that's also an improvement for Lawbringer we're going to have there. But we didn't have one at 400 because we know that at 400, this guaranteed is going to work.
Yeah.
But we want to see what the threshold is, right? So again, we're going to count on our players to really, really go through this and help us determine what the exact threshold is. And again, is it 466? Is it 433? It can be different per hero as well, right? So if you feel that Conk is okay at 466, but maybe Lawbringer needs to be at 4, don't hesitate to give that feedback. It is not an issue whatsoever. If you feel that, like, maybe at 4 it's okay, at 433 probably would be okay, give that feedback as well. We're super psyched to hear everything we can hear from this.
Yeah.
But it's very, very crucial that we get a lot of people's eyes on this and playing it and trying it out and seeing how it feels.
Sure.
So that's great there.
So there you go. That's a big change. It's rather it's rather encompassing. Again, there's a lot of heroes there. If you saw that, you can go back and check out the VOD after this to get a complete breakdown. I'm sure some of you out there already taken notes, which is fine. But
what I like too is that I've read quite often on Reddit people saying, they would never do this.
We would never do this?
Yeah. And
who said that? We must find this Reddit.
And then it happens. I don't know what's going on.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so what we got with
Sometimes
Lawbringer?
I wonder if I'm like just trolling Reddit and going on it and just going, I can't do this now, can you? And then
but we'll need your feedback for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So try them out and let us know.
Yeah, and then we have Lawbringer round 2. So what we're gonna be doing for Lawbringer, I'm gonna try to explain really quickly because it would take forever to go through everything from the first testing grounds and this one.
Right.
So what I would recommend is go look at what we had for the VODs of the first one, patch notes for that one as well, like in the blog post and everything, to see what the changes were. Because what we're going to be talking about today is the changes from the first to this testing ground. So if something was in the first one and we don't mention it today, it means it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
All right. So that's like the first thing to start with. So now let's get going.
Okay.
So
what you got for me?
Lawbringer, right? So the very first thing I gotta say it because otherwise a certain Vanessa is gonna have my head. We changed the animation for the shove in chains, right? So we know this was, I think, the most vocal thing we had. I remember reading back the chat from the VOD and everything. Yeah. So we know sometimes animations are not final when we put them in testing grounds. We felt we were like, okay, we're gonna fix it regardless. But it was a huge part of the feedback.
It was, Which again, it was placeholder. We mentioned we were going to keep working on it,
but that's it. So now what it looks like is this. So
nice.
So we don't have that kind of like jittery stuff. We still have like slightly different visuals for it, a bit more angled. Again, it's still faintable like we had before, so it works well. But the animation should be at least more readable there. That should help quite a bit. So next up, we're going to go on the rest of the changes because they're kind of important. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is Impale. So the changes, so Impale, right? We had a change before where you could,
Sorry.
Let's do it. So Impale, if you let go before, you couldn't wall splat. We had made that change so that, like, I didn't even get it there, but it doesn't really matter. We had a couple of changes to Impale where that's it. You couldn't really wall splat if you let go early. You went into that little window once you hit the wall to get into that follow up and everything. So all those things are gone, right? So players didn't really like it. It didn't really change anything. At the end of the day, it didn't make that much of a difference. And it had other impacts on other parts of the hero's kit we're going to be talking about. But one of the things that we've also changed that is a big difference here is Impale now is only guaranteed after a light parry. It is no longer guaranteed after a heavy parry. So if you throw me a top heavy, for example, I need to parry it because I'm really bad at this, it looks like. Yeah, see, so I can do Impale. So now I hit you, but if we do it again, you can block it.
Oh, if I block the right side.
You block the right side, right? There you go. So it's blockable, it's parryable, everything off of a heavy parry, right? So no longer off of any random heavy parry, basically, can you ledge somebody with Impale, can you deal like really high amounts of damage with Impale. So that's really gone there. Makes a big difference for how the hero is. The actual change is that Impale
I like the change, though. I like the change. That was just funny. That was just funny.
We've had to do like some work under the hood to make sure they was still coming out properly. You can still do it, but it can get blocked or parried after a heavy, but not after a light. So we're good to go there. So that works quite well. So that's kind of interesting here. We've also removed the stun on the top heavy after a parry. So if you do me a do a side dodge heavy.
Side dodge heavy.
Right, so this here used the stun.
Right.
We removed the stun here. A lot of players really weren't super happy with that stun still. It was the last place we kept stun. We wanted to keep it just to give it a shot. And even then, the feedback was kind of unanimous. We don't like the stun here. Perfect. We remove it. That's great. That's the kind of feedback that I like to hear, right?
Easy. Yeah.
I'd rather it be in and players don't like it and say, I don't like this, please change it. Right. Than the opposite, where we don't do anything or don't change it, and then people say, we have no feedback on it, and then it's kind of hard to act on it, right? We've also lowered, you can see the damage here probably on the screen. We've lowered the damage from that top heavy finisher. It used to do 32 damage. It now deals a much more respectable rate. Okay, well, we'll just go through the text then. That's fine. So it used to deal 32 damage. Now it deals 25.
That's all we wanted.
So
to
yeah.
That's fine.
Right. So then it deals 25. a lot easier to deal with. Doesn't deal as much damage. On a light parry, you don't get massive damage. You still get that guaranteed light afterwards, so you're good to go. I don't know if we can still get in, but
we wanna.
So that's for the top heavy finisher when you parry, and then the dedicated light parry punish. So whenever you parry, if you press light, you get that quick hit.
Yeah.
It used to deal 16. We lowered it down to 12.
Chill, y'all. Relax. It is funny. I'm not gonna lie, it is funny.
To be like a much more normal, like damage range, right? I don't think we'll be able to because we have to regroup and everything.
The timing is just hilarious.
So we lowered the damage there to make it a lot more in line with what our other parry punishes are on lights. It still counts as the second hit in your chain, so you go to finishers, you get all that good stuff. But it's an idea of the damage was too high, so we really need to lower the damage on Lawbringer. That was another one of the big complaints that we had with the hero, which I totally get.
Yeah.
Damage was still a bit too high, so we're really trying to lower it.
Yep.
Next up, we removed the armor, the uninterruptible stance, as the official name is, on the heavy finishers for all three sides. I've read a lot of comments about maybe we should keep it on top. Maybe we should keep it everywhere. Maybe we should just remove it altogether. So we've decided to remove it altogether on all three sides, especially because top has that follow-up that you can go to that guaranteed light and keep looping there, which is still super interesting for us. But no longer having that armor, because those heavies have such big, wide, unblockable trajectories, you don't really need that armor that much. Should make Lawbringer a little bit easier to be peeled, although to be fair, it's still hard because it's still, big trajectories hitting you.
Right.
But that makes a big difference there. And we've also lowered the damage of that attack. It used to deal 30, like the sides used to deal 30, top used to deal 32. Now the sides, all three sides actually deal 28. So because they deal a little bit less damage, again, we're under our 30 threshold. They're super, super, super good heavies. Yeah. I kept hearing from the community, these are like the best heavy finishers that we have off of any character.
Nice.
They're pretty fast. They have the top one has soft feint to guard break to do a lot of good stuff. They have big trajectories and everything. So this is great. They land too often, lower the damage a little bit, works well. Also because of the impale changes, the second heavy in chains used to deal 20 damage, right? Because the idea was you're gonna impale somebody, hit them to the wall, get into your other attacks and deal 20. But because impale is no longer guaranteed off of heavy parries, you don't get like close to 26 damage off of a heavy parry, which was like insanely high, and a potential to ledge and everything. So
am I going to be manning Lawbringer?
Yeah.
I don't know. We want to test him out.
Because of that, we were able to revert the damage back and push it back to 26, so that you actually want to use those heavies and you're good to go.
Gotcha.
Finally, we've done some changes to long arm. So one of the other complaints, not complaints, like feedbacks that we got, right? Complaints is a strong word, is that you could actually perform long arm on opponents after you've guard broken them, right? It was a bit of a hidden tech. Not everybody knew about it, but essentially you could do like guard break and then hold back heavy and guard break and do a long arm every single time.
Yes.
So normally that wasn't an issue because on live right now, like without the testing ground changes, the problem was that you can guard break, you go into a long arm, but the follow-ups on live on long arm are not really they're not that good. You really risk a lot because you can you throw your heavy. If you don't go into a second attack, you get guard broken for free every single time. So with the changes that we've done to long arm, lets us do a lot more damage. And so having that high damage off of a guard break was way too high. So we've removed that ability entirely. You can no longer long arm off of a guard break by yourself. That was super wet. A lot of pro players came to me and told me yeah, this is a bit too much. So we've decided to remove it. And we've also removed the fact that long arm paused and drained stamina.
Okay.
That's gone as well. So that it's still a good ganking tool. You can still do a lot of good stuff with it. But we wanted to tone it down a little bit. And the last thing that we've done, just to close this out, is the back throw distance. So if you're not super aware, Lawbringer, when he guard breaks you and throws you backwards, he used to throw you backwards super, super, super far. And you could ledge you from really far away, get you wall splats. Yeah, we're a little bit too late now. Yeah, so you could throw it super far away, get a lot of stuff. So we've reduced the back throw distance by half. You used to push them 2.5 meters.
I remember I got ledged. It was the final. It was the final game in elimination.
So
I think Law broke back through me, and I went flying. Okay,
it makes a big difference here. So that's it for those changes.
I'm all
so
for that
essentially,
change.
for Lawbringer, We know that like the first one was not super well received. There was a lot. We got a lot of good feedback, not feedback that was positive, but a lot of really really good feedback.
Right.
And so we've taken it in stride to take a lot of that feedback and really go ahead and try to adjust a lot of it, so that we can make a hero that's a lot better balanced. Like damage has been lowered almost across the board. Impale is only off of like parries anymore, or still after sprint, but like really having like those changes to make the hero a little bit less. Not oppressive, but a bit less difficult to fight against.
Right.
It still felt like really bad to fight against a bunch of Lawbringers that could just impale you off of everything, get a lot of damage off all the time. So we're really hoping that with these changes, we're still pushing Lawbringer in the direction where we wanted him to go, which was have the hero that still has, he's still a parry specialist, right? So still really good at parrying, still has a lot of dedicated parry punishes, but at the end of the day, still be able to be a lot more offensive, because having super defensive heroes in For Honor, where your entire game plan revolves around, I'm going to sit here and wait, is not, it can be, I understand it can be fun for some players to play, right?
Yeah.
Totally. But it is not the direction that we really want to push the game towards. We've been doing a lot of strides, a lot of pushes towards having more unreactable offense, better offense, more offensive based gameplay, and not really go back to the turtle meta that we had at some point where all you could do really was just like stare in front of somebody's face, right?
Just wait.
So that's not super interactive. It's not a lot of fun. And then fighting somebody that's a reaction monster that's able to do everything against you all the time did not feel good either. So with these changes, we're really, really pushing the hero towards a bit more like, yeah, you're still a parry specialist. Yeah, you still get a lot of options off a parry, but at the same time, you can actually attack people now, which is what's super important here.
Well, wow. So that's very in depth. Thank you so much, JC, for sharing that. And again, for everybody out there, just we
that's
want
good.
to
I like the
stress
changes.
and reiterate this.
Let's see how they
testing
implement
grounds
it,
is
and let's
really
see
a
how it
tool
actually
for
plays out.
us. It's a tool for us to